Hello, boys and girls. I hope you enjoyed your independent reading time from 1 to 1:30 and are now for a little bit of quiet time where you can listen to Miss Enlow read from the book Among the Hidden by Margaret Peterson Haddix. It is an incredible book about a boy named Luke who is the third child in his family. But where they live and the population police has said there cannot be 3 children. So Luke has to hide. So let's read chapter 1 in the book and find all about Luke. Chapter 1. He saw the first tree shudder and fall far off in the distance. Then he heard his mother call out the kitchen window, "Luke! Inside, now!" He had never disobeyed the order to hide. Even as a toddler, barely able to walk in the backyard's tall grass, he had somehow understood the fear in his mother's voice. But on this day, he took one extra breath of fresh air, scented with clover and honeysuckle and far away smell of pine smoke. He laid his hoe down gently, savored one last moment of feeling warm soil beneath his bare feet, and he reminded himself, I will never be allowed outside again. Maybe never again as long as I live. He turned and walked into the house as silently as a shadow. Can you imagine not being able to go outside ever again in your entire life? I sure cannot. I would be very, very sad. Why? He asked at the supper table that night. It isn't a common question in the Garner house. There are plenty how questions, like how much rain the backyard get, or how's the planting going, or even what questions. What's Dad going to do about the busted tire? But why was not worth asking. But Luke asked again anyway. Why'd you have to sell the woods? Luke's dad paused in the midst of shoveling forkfuls of boiled potatoes in his mouth. Told you before, we didn't have a choice. Government wanted it. You can't tell the government no. Mother came over and gave Luke's shoulder a reassuring squeeze before turning back to the stove. They had defied the government once before with Luke. They had taken all the defiance they had in them, maybe more. We wouldn't have sold the woods if we hadn't had to, she said. The government didn't ask us if we wanted houses there. But the government's not going to live in the houses, Luke protested. At 12, he knew better, but sometimes he still pictured the government as a very big, mean person, 2 or 3 times as tall as the ordinary man, who went around yelling at people, not allowed, stop that. It was because of the way his parents and older brothers talked. Government won't let us plant corn there again. Government keeps the prices down. Government's not going to like this crop. Probably some of the people who live in those houses will be government workers, Mother said. It'll all be city people. If he'd been allowed, Luke would have gone over to the kitchen window and peered out at the woods. Or had stood. Luke knew from a sneak peek right before supper that half the trees were now toppled over. Their absence made everything look different, like a fresh haircut exposing a band of untanned skin on a forehead. Even from deep inside the kitchen, Luke could tell the trees were missing because everything was brighter, more open, scarier. Why would more open space, the trees being gone, be scarier for Luke? Maybe because he has to hide because he's not supposed to even have been born. And then when those people move in, I have to stay away from the windows? Luke asked, though he already knew the answer. The question made Dad explode. He slammed his hands down on the table. Then you got to stay away now. Everybody and his brother's going to be tramping around back there to see what's going on. If they see you, he waved his fork violently. Luke wasn't sure what that gesture meant, but he knew it wasn't good. No one had ever told him exactly what would happen if anyone saw him. Death? Death was what happened to the runt pigs who got stepped on by their stronger brothers and sisters. Death was a fly that stopped buzzing when the swatter hit it. He had a hard time thinking about himself in connection with being the smashed fly or the dead pig gone stiff in the sun. It made his stomach feel funny even trying. I don't think it's fair. We've got to do Luke's chores now, Luke's other brother Mark grumbled. Can't he go outside some? Maybe at night? His brothers are getting jealous because Luke won't be able to do his chores anymore. Luke waited hopefully for the answer, but Dad just said, no, without looking up. It's not fair, Mark said again. Mark was the second son. The lucky second, Luke thought when he was feeling sorry for himself. Mark was 2 years older than Luke and barely a year younger than Matthew, the oldest child. Matthew and Mark were easily recognizable as brothers, with their dark hair and chiseled faces. Luke was fairer, smaller boned, softer looking. He often wondered if he ever looked tougher like them. Somehow he didn't think so. Luke don't do nothing now, nohow, Matthew jeered. We won't miss his work at all. It's not my fault, Luke protested. I'd help more if... Mother laid her hands on his shoulders again. Hush, all of you, she said. Luke will do what he can. He always has. The sound of tires on the gravel driveway came through the open window. Now who? Dad started. Luke knew the rest of the sentence. Who could that be? Why were they bothering him now? His first chance all day to sit down. It was a question Luke always heard the end of from the other side of the door. Today, skittish because of the woods coming down, he scrambled up faster than usual, dashing for the door to the back stairs. He knew without watching that Mother would take his plate from the table, hide it in the cupboard, would slide his chair back into the corner so it looked like an unneeded spare. In 3 seconds, she would hide all evidence that Luke ever existed, just in time to step to the door and offer a weary smile to the fertilizer salesman or the government inspector or whomever else have come to interrupt their supper. But within 3 seconds, the house was wiped clean of any presence of Luke at all. How would that make you feel if you were the third child and you shouldn't have been born and you had to hide your entire life? Tune in tomorrow when we will read chapter 2 to find out more about Luke.